Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Our show is brought to you by Whoop. May is Sleep Mania month, and we're competing with our friends from Talking Elite Fitness, the Buttery Bros, and CrossFit Mayhem to see which team gets the highest sleep scores. We're all going to be bringing you sleep tips throughout the month of May, and Whoop is giving out prizes to the top sleep scorers on each team. Check out the description below to join our team or get a free strap an extra month when you sign up with the membership link in our description. On today's show, we have our good friend Armen and Morning Chalk Up's CEO, Justin LoFranco, to discuss, can anyone beat Tia-Clair Toomey? It's the question that we've been asking since she went on this streak of becoming the fittest woman on earth. Armen, let's start with you. This past weekend at the Torian Pro, Toomey became the first athlete to ever win every single event at a semifinal. And her event wins, they weren't just by seconds, but by minutes. So what do you think this means for her competitors by the time she's actually peaking at the CrossFit Games?
I think it's hard to say that her 6 for 6 performance is going to translate to a 13 for 13 or 14 for 14 performance in Madison at the CrossFit Games this year. But it does say that she's absolutely the best female CrossFitter alive right now, bar none. I mean, I think that's pretty safe, non-controversial statement to make there. And to answer the question, can anyone beat Tia-Clair Toomey? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. There is one person who can beat Tia-Clair Toomey, and that is Tia-Clair Toomey herself. If in some sort of weird time travel, Terminator-esque robot Tia from the future comes back to prevent some sort of apocalyptic catastrophe, I think that could probably happen. But realistically speaking, I think honestly, there's anyone who makes it to the CrossFit Games is at a level of competition at this point that is fierce, and the best of the best find new ways of competing and new ways of really performing that we may or may not have seen in the past. And I think that means that any given CrossFit Games competition, Tia has a handful of women who can really push her and beat her. And it absolutely means that she should never, ever let the steam out of her engine. She shouldn't try and coast through any of these events. And the fact that she went 6 for 6 at Torian Pro, I mean, that basically proves that she's not at all trying to coast through any of these seasons.
Justin, you got your pencil and paper. You're anxiously taking notes over there.
I have my pencil and paper. Her performance this weekend was on another level. I mean, frankly, it was on another level. She went 6 for 6, which is unheard of. We've never seen that happen before. It mirrors kind of her performance at the 2020 Games, where it was where she was running away with it. So I think you have to liken a little bit to the competition level. I mean, it's not that year was not statistically is hard to quantify and compare to other competitions, and so it does have a lot to do with who she's up against and who she's competing against. No disrespect to the other athletes that are out there in the Oceania semifinal, but Cara Saunders is a top 5 athlete, top 5 Games athlete. The other athletes that were competing there are not. And in order to steal points from Tia in such a small field, it's hard to be able to compare that. Amazing feat, amazing accomplishment, not trying to take away from that. But the only way you're going to get an unseat Tia is for other athletes to be able to come in between and keep separation. So even if Cara had come in and stolen one workout or lifted a little bit heavier, you're only getting 1 for 2 or 1 for 2, and it would have been a basic trade-off. The one thing that I want to point out that I think is really important when we take the Games into context here is the fact that this is a new CrossFit Games with a new programmer. That is the biggest wild card that nobody is thinking about, nobody's talking about, and no one said anything about before. As much as Boz has been around there for years, as much as he's been with Dave step and step, games after games, and been along the way in the methodology and the thought process and the programming, he is a new guy with totally different ideas for how the CrossFit Games may run. Now, he may play this completely safe and say, hey, you know what, on Wednesday, we're getting in the water, we're going to go run, and we're going to, get on a bicycle and go around the lake or whatever he's going to do. And then he's going to follow that up with, 3 other workouts that day, take a break on Thursday and do the same kind of, layout. Or he may do something completely different because he is his own guy. And if he has any ideas about how he wants to implement this, well, guess what? Rich Froning has said it before. I train for the CrossFit Games. I train to win the CrossFit Games. If you have been to the CrossFit Games multiple times or you've studied them, you know what that looks like, what that feels like. Doesn't mean you predict the individual workouts, But heck, if you're not doing certain things, well, guess what? You're probably not going to perform very well when it comes down to it, because he repeats the workouts or the movements several times over and over again. So I think that's the X factor. So I'm bringing that up there to only say is, yeah, she's sweeping the field. She's done an amazing job. But guess what? We don't know what's going to happen come August. Nobody does.
Armen, going off of that a bit, do you think that there's anything that could be programmed that we would see a big hole in Tia's weakness that we just don't expect, and she would potentially fall short on the leaderboard?
Historically, she doesn't really have a lot of events that she lays goose eggs on. She's kind of almost brutally well-rounded, and I think that is a factor of how much understanding she and Shane have of how to actually train in order to perform at her best for the tests that they're going to be doing. And I think one of the reasons why this point that Justin brought up about the programming is a really solid point, is that the Dave Castro version of the CrossFit Games was essentially a solved puzzle. You knew for a fact that there was going to be certain combinations of movements, that the schedule was going to look a certain way, and maybe, just maybe, that is just the best logistical way of handling it, and practicality rules that we're not going to see it be much different. But also maybe Boz could have a different way of doing things, a way of doing things that tests different combinations and modalities that we haven't necessarily seen show up at the CrossFit Games. And I think pound for pound, toe-to-toe, Tia-Clair Toomey can beat just about anybody on the face of the planet on a regular workout that you'd see inside of a gym, or a regular event that you would see programmed at an event like semifinals, because of the constraints of the types of events that you can program for those places and competitions. But once the games comes in and there's maybe some types of specialty things that might show up that she's not necessarily skilled at, and perhaps there's somebody else in the field who is skilled at those things, or we see a type of movement like the wall walks show up at the games last year. We saw Mal O'Brien do exceptionally well and hand Tia an L in that workout, which really comes down to Mal's ability to cycle through the wall walks differently than what Tia did, because on the barbell, they were pretty close to one another in that event. And I think that's really the X factor here. Tia's capacity has been proven time and time again. And the only real stumbling block that we could potentially see is if a series of events that are absolutely radical and unknown show up and are tested in a way that benefit someone else in the field who happens to be a specialist in those things. And, we talked about this with Matt Fraser a ton, which was it takes the entire field to beat Matt, which is why his performance at the 2020 games was so dominant. The field just wasn't there. And in a situation in the women's side of the competition, there isn't necessarily the one or two athletes who might be able to capitalize on the field beating Tia. So Tia has maybe even an easier time being dominant than Matt might have, because she doesn't have a Fikowski or a Vellner who's just constantly breathing down her neck.
Well, yeah,
So
and
Justin,
to Armen's point, you also got Annie and Holta, who have dropped out. Annie was third,
yeah.
Holta was fourth in 2021. Annie's obviously team, Holta's retired. And then fifth place is Adams. And frankly, I mean, I have a lot of respect for Adams, not only as her growth and continued trajectory up there, but I don't think she's prepared to take on Toomey, frankly speaking. And then so that leaves Laura Horvath, and you're like, well, not that she can't. It's just, can she? I don't know. And
So is there somebody, Justin, who you think can actually prevent Tia from winning a sixth straight title?
Right now, the two best
the
bets
size
right
says everything.
I mean, Gabi Magala got sixth. She's a great athlete. She did really well, but she still took a backseat to Laura Horvath last weekend in Lowlands. Laura Horvath is the one that we would say has. I mean, she did very, very well in her rookie year. She stumbled over a couple of years and didn't perform as much as she hoped or expected, and then came back last year with a second place finish. I know the Achilles heel here is things like strict parallel handstand push-ups or strict deficit handstand push-ups or pressing inverted pressing ability has kind of been her Achilles heel. Now, when we see, or if we see that programmed again at the games, then we can reevaluate that. But outside of that, she's an extremely strong, versatile competitor. Very varied sports background that she has. Rock climbing, we saw that on display with the obstacle course race, which she completely decimated through. She's a great runner as well. I just don't know. I don't know if anybody's got it. That's the thing. And Armen said it. I don't think there's one athlete that's going to be able to come in and take Tia. I mean, just by way of statistics, in 2021, she only lost 6 events. In 2020 games across 19 events, by the way, because of parts 1 and 2, she again only lost 6 events. And the previous year in 2019, with all of the cuts that were going on, and there was a monstrously large field up until Saturday, she lost 7 events. And so really what you have to have happen here is that you're going to have to create separation. We've said that before and again, is that without separation, frankly speaking, you are not going to unseat Frazier when Frazier was dominant. You're not going to unseat Tia. She's currently demonstrating is no separation means shoe-in. You get second, you get first, you get top 5 in every event. If you're not 1, you're 2. And if that's not it, then the field must be extremely tight in the top side. So it's just really, really tough to beat a competitor that dominant. But unfortunately for the fans, it would be good if somebody did. So the entertainment factor would certainly go up. If on the last day she wasn't ahead by 250 points.
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever you have a final day of competition that your leader could just sit out,
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing story in and of itself, but it definitely adds a couple of yawns and a couple snooze factor points to the entire experience. I think
the head-to-head battle is always the most fun when you're sitting on the edge of your seat and people who have been trying to tally the whole time don't even know who won.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the best moments in CrossFit history.
Tia game.
Exactly.
2017 Tia down to the wire in that moment. That was
holding their breath.
That was one of the most exciting moments. I was there in the arena watching that. It was electric. I mean, completely electric. Everybody was on their seats. And remember, guys, sports is entertainment. Like, sports is entertainment. We are not there for the virtue of just watching the NBA finals, just feeling like, you know what, it's so fantastic that the Lakers won. That's just neat. No, I want to see dunks. I want to see highlights, man. I want to see somebody shooting from the logo out there. That's what I want to see when I go to the CrossFit games too. I want to see somebody going for 400. I want to see some 400-pound clean. Somebody go out there and do that, right? I want to see somebody go do something that's absolutely crazy. And sports is entertainment, guys. It's not for the virtue of just having this thing so that somebody can win it. I want fans to be going to their seats at the same time too. So, I mean, gosh, I hope somebody comes in and decides. I hope somebody pulls one out of their ass and just says, you know what, guess what? I decided I'm going to wake up and I'm going to work my butt off for the next 19 months if that's what it takes, because unfortunately that's what it does take. And Matt Frazier, that's what he decided he was going to do. He went out and he chose pain every single morning, woke up and went into his basement and was like, you know what, guys, guess what? I'm going to hurt every day. I'm going Rocky Balboa for the next 19 months, and you guys are going to pay for it. I'm going to bloody you guys up every time I step out on the field, and that's what he did. So, frankly, I think it's the other 39 athletes to blame because they just aren't working hard enough, I guess.
Armen, Armen, what's your bottom line?
I mean, the bottom line is Tia is probably, I'm going to scratch the probably. Tia is the greatest CrossFitter to ever live. I think pound for pound, inch for inch, she's untouchable if you look at just overall performances and power output. And, we keep mentioning Matt Frazier and the pain cave. And I think the X factor here is, what's Mal been up to over the past year? What's that training been like ever since she's been kind of under his tutelage? And it's not exactly a sport in which knowing your competitors really intimately pays off any dividends. It's not like you can play any defense against your opponent's offense. But Matt does know a thing or two about developing world-class ability to dominate in the sport. And if Mal is all in and really underneath his wing and underneath his tutelage, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do with her. Is her trend, I think, going to be very interesting to see what he's moving in the right direction? Is her performance going to be saying something about her ability to win this year or her ability to win in the future? Or is it going to be a situation in which she kind of peaks and hits a ceiling? We don't know. We're not going to know until they're both on the floor together in Madison. And I think that's,
we're going to see them in the
an
Grand
interesting
Games.
story.
You know, 2 weeks, not this weekend, but next weekend, we're going to see Mal.
Yeah, but it's not the same. It's not exactly the same.
Early indicators. I mean, look, like if we're gonna give Tia the six win sweep and say she's basically rolling in on a freight train to a victory come games day, I'm gonna go on the other side and I'm gonna say, well, look, if Mal Bryan comes up and she wrecks, with a wrecking ball, like I'm gonna say, geez, like I think, maybe that 7th place finish wasn't just a fluke, but she's moving in the direction of, being able to be as dominant or at least competitive against it. And that's exactly what you need. You need like 3 or 4 athletes that are like, yeah, we showed up to play and we're going hard. And I filled in some gaps perhaps. And I know Matt is very good. If I know one thing about Frazier, is he's very good at attacking micro changes, fills in gaps to basically identify weakness areas and fixes. It's even fixes as little and crazy as transitions off the rower. I mean, he is that detail oriented. So if anybody can do that for an athlete like Mal, who's young and teachable, 18 years old, obviously very strong, I would say Mal Bryan actually is we'll see how she performs in 2 weeks, but I think she's a great person to be keeping an eye out for. So,
Justin, what is your bold bottom line?
I think I already went pretty bold. I mean,
you have no limits.
I basically accused the other 39 athletes of being soft. So, I mean, at this point, I don't think you can get much bolder than that. Other than Tia's.
How about if you guys actually started training and stopped just putzing around on the field out there? That's Justin's bottom line.
As Justin's at home sipping his beer, eating pizza. You guys need to train harder.
It's pizza and water, Lauren, please.
I'm not competing at the games.
Justin's there for entertainment.
I will say this though, and this is a verifiable fact at this point. Well, it's not at this point. No legacy athlete has ever been unseated. Legacy athlete in, I know Katrin had two. I don't. That's not a legacy. I mean, it's back-to-back championship, phenomenal, very hard to do, obviously. But Froning, Frazier, both retired. Tia has still undefeated. It's once they've gotten over this third hump, it's like, see ya later. And the ones who won were second place athletes. Froning, second place athlete, turns first and goes on. Frazier, second place athlete, first, never looks back. Tia-Clair Toomey, second place athlete, goes on. And it always gets replaced. It's the one who was just not quite good enough, but was right there. So if you're looking at that, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, Laura Horvath is second place athlete. She's had it twice, but anyways, I'm not trying to predict who's going to be the next one. It just has never happened before. But for the annals of history, it would be great for sports fans to be able to see a serious challenge at the top, where people were raising to their feet. So we're going to the final event with it being unknown. That's the greatest moment in sports, is when you don't know who's going to win and you're going down to the final shot. And my bottom line is for fans out there, I'm sure they would like to have a big, long, drawn out fight that goes to the wire. So, and I'm a fan of the sport too. So I'm speaking, as an interested person to myself. So.
A couple of months away from the games, we'll see if everybody's sitting in silence or on their feet, biting their nails. History is yet to be made. Armen, J-Lo, thank you guys for sitting down to talk with us. We'll see you next time.
My pleasure. Thank you.